My kids moved me to a small shed in the backyard. I turned it into an Airbnb and made $20. Before we get into the story, tell us in the comment section where you are watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your honest review. You always think family will have your back. You raise your kids with love, patience, sacrifice, and you dream of the day when you can finally rest, be surrounded by the very people you gave everything to. That was my dream. Until they put me in a shed. Let me back up. I'm Margaret Dawson, 64, retired school teacher. For most of my life, I worked with kids who didn't have much, some from broken homes, some just needing a kind word and structure. I gave them that. But the irony? I had no idea that the very people I raised under my own roof would one day treat me like I didn't belong in theirs. When I retired last fall, it felt like the start of something beautiful. No more early alarms, no more lesson plans, just me, my books, my garden dreams, and family. Olivia, my eldest, invited me to move in with her and her brother Eric. They share a lovely 2-story home with plenty of space. She said, "It'll be fun, Mom. Liam adores you. We'll all be together." I sold my modest condo, gave away half my furniture, packed up my life into 5 cardboard boxes, and I moved in with nothing but hope. That hope didn't last long. From day one, the warmth was missing. Olivia smiled through clenched teeth. Eric barely looked up from his phone. And Liam, sweet 12-year-old Liam, he was the only one who still treated me like a human being. I tried to stay out of the way. I helped around the house, cooked dinner, folded laundry, even made breakfast for everyone. But gradually, I noticed things. My food would be left untouched, my laundry refolded, as if mine wasn't good enough. And every time I entered the room, the conversation would just die. Then came the meeting. It was a Sunday evening. Olivia called me into the living room with that fake smile plastered on her face. Eric sat beside her fidgeting. Liam stood awkwardly in the hallway. "Mom," Olivia began, "we've been talking, and we think it's time you had your own space. Somewhere more private, quieter." She gestured toward the backyard. "We built a guest house out there. It's small but cozy. You'd love it. Plus, we really need the house to ourselves again. For boundaries. You understand, right? Guest house?" What she pointed to was a glorified storage shed, 8 by 10 feet, unfinished wood, no bathroom, one dusty window. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Eric added, "It's just temporary. We'll make it comfortable for you." I nodded, slowly, like a puppet. Because what do you say when your own children push you out like clutter? They moved my things that same night. My new home was a cold wooden box with a sagging twin mattress, a crooked table, and a lamp that flickered when it felt like it. There was no plumbing, no insulation, no TV. I cried that night. Not because of the shed, but because I felt erased. They didn't even knock. They just left dinner in foil outside the door like I was some wild animal they were trying to tame. And the next morning, oh, the cherry on top, I overheard Olivia on the phone. "She's lucky we didn't put her in a home. This was the best compromise." That's when something inside me snapped. Not in anger, in clarity. You see, you can take away someone's comfort. You can even strip away their dignity for a while. But you can't take away their will to rise. That night, while everyone was asleep, I sat cross-legged on the cold wooden floor, opened the one thing they hadn't taken from me, my old laptop, and typed into Google.
How to list a tiny house on Airbnb. I didn't know a thing about Airbnb, but I knew this shed had 4 walls. And I knew that people rented tree houses and yurts and converted buses all over the country. So why not this? Why not me? It was risky. I had no running water, no budget, but I had time, I had creativity, and I had a silent fire in my chest that said, "Don't let this be the end of your story." I spent the next few days quietly observing the backyard. I watched Olivia leave for work at 8. Eric followed at 9:15. Liam caught the school bus at 7:30. That gave me 5 golden hours a day to build something no one saw coming. But before I could start turning this dusty box into something magical, I needed a plan. I needed lights, fabric, furniture, a little money. I remembered a box of old jewelry in my suitcase, some gifts from my late husband. I hesitated, then logged onto eBay. Within 3 days, I'd made $180. Not much, but just enough to begin. I wasn't sure how far I could go. I wasn't even sure if it would work. But I knew one thing. They moved me to the backyard because they thought I was done. forgotten, a burden. But they forgot the one thing every teacher learns early on. The quietest ones are always full of surprises. What came next? Let's just say, they weren't prepared for what I was about to build in their backyard. You know what they say. If they throw you to the wolves, come back leading the pack. That's exactly what I intended to do. It had been 2 weeks since my own children had moved me into the so-called guest house, a dusty 8x10 wooden box that barely had a roof. But something had shifted in me. Pain has a funny way of sharpening your purpose, and I was done waiting to be seen. So I decided, if this was the space they gave me, I'd turn it into something beautiful, not just to survive, but to thrive. Every morning after they left the house, I sprang into action. I gave myself 5 hours a day, 5 hours to rebuild, repaint, repurpose. I started by clearing out everything, the creaky bed frame, the splintered table, the flickering lamp. Out they went. I sold what I could on Facebook Marketplace. Old costume jewelry, vintage teaching materials, even my retirement gift set, gone. Each sale gave me a little more breathing room, a little more power. By the end of the week, I had scraped together $600. Not much, but enough for a dreamer with a vision. I used peel and stick flooring from a discount warehouse, hung white curtains from dollar store rods, threw on fairy lights, secondhand throw pillows, and potted plants I found by the roadside. And just like that, the shed didn't feel like exile anymore. It felt like mine. I painted a wooden sign over the doorway. Grandma's getaway. A joke at first. But as I stood there, looking at what I had created with nothing but grit and broken pride, it didn't feel like a joke at all. I won't lie, there were moments I felt like quitting. The first time the rain leaked through the ceiling. The night I heard Olivia laughing with friends on the porch, pretending like I didn't exist. Or when Eric made a joke at dinner, saying, "Mom's new shed has more character than she does." They didn't know I was listening, but it only fueled me more. Because while they were busy laughing, I was busy building. Once the inside was finished, I went back to my laptop. I watched tutorials, read listing descriptions, and even studied guest reviews from similar Airbnbs. I didn't just want to rent this space, I wanted it to be a destination. So I wrote a listing. Grandma's getaway, a cozy backyard escape. Charming, peaceful, full of soul, perfect for artists, travelers, and anyone who needed a little stillness in a noisy world. I listed it for $85 a night. Modest. But I threw in fresh-baked cookies and morning tea, because let's be honest, hospitality is what grandmothers do best. I hit publish and waited, and waited. Nothing the first 2 days. I began to doubt myself. Maybe people would see through it, a remodeled shed in someone's backyard. But then on the third night at 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Booking confirmed, 2 nights this weekend. My heart nearly exploded. And just like that, Grandma's getaway had its first guest. His name was Kevin, a freelance writer passing through town who needed peace and quiet. He said the name of the place made him smile. Felt like a warm hug just reading it, he wrote. I prepped everything, cleaned every inch of the space, set out a handwritten welcome note, and made my best oatmeal raisin cookies, the ones Olivia always claimed were too old-fashioned. Kevin arrived Saturday morning. And before he even set his bag down, he said, "This place is magic." For the first time in a long time, I felt proud. Not for being useful, not for being convenient, but for creating something that brought joy. Kevin stayed 2 nights, left a glowing review, and then the floodgates opened. Within a week, I had 6 more bookings. Artists, students, newlyweds on a tight budget. Every single one of them left rave reviews. Charming, quiet, and spiritual. Felt like visiting my grandma's cabin in the woods. Only this wasn't a cabin. And I wasn't just a grandma. I was a businesswoman now. Of course, Olivia and Eric were clueless. They assumed I was knitting or journaling out back all day. But one afternoon I overheard Liam whispering, "Mom, why are there strangers walking around the yard with suitcases?" Busted. Olivia confronted me that evening. "Mom, what's going on? Are you renting out the shed?" I just smiled. "Well," I said, "you told me it was my space, remember? Thought I'd make the most of it." She didn't know what to say. Eric grumbled something about liability and zoning laws, but his face turned pale when I told him I'd already made $2,000 in 2 weeks. They didn't say much after that, but I saw it in their eyes: shock, confusion, and fear. They thought I'd break when they pushed me aside. But now, the same shed they used to humiliate me was making more money than Eric's side hustle. And the guests kept coming. I upgraded the lighting, installed a compost toilet, got help wiring a solar panel for backup power. Every dollar I made went back into the business. By month 2, I was fully booked for the next 6 weeks, and word had gotten around town. The coffee shop started giving me free samples for my guests. A local photographer asked if she could rent the space for shoots. Grandma's Getaway was becoming a brand. Then, the bombshell. One evening, Olivia came into the shed uninvited. No knock, no smile. She stood there, arms crossed. "Mom, you need to shut this down." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're making things complicated. Neighbors are asking questions. It's embarrassing." I could barely contain my laughter. "Embarrassing," I said. "You dumped me in a shed and called it a favor. Now you're ashamed that I made it something people actually want?" Her eyes flashed. "This wasn't supposed to be permanent," I smiled. "Well, darling, neither was being treated like a burden." That night, after she stormed out, I got a message from someone claiming to be a travel influencer. She wanted to book 3 nights in exchange for a review to her 250,000 followers. I stared at the screen, stunned. And just like that, everything was about to change. You won't believe what happens next. Trust me, this is only the beginning. I once read that betrayal doesn't break you, it reveals you. What I didn't expect was that it would also reveal them.
After the sabotage, after the false reports and the slashed curtains, I realized this wasn't just about money or pride. It was about power. The kind of power people think they own over you, just because they once changed your diapers. But I had changed too, and I was no longer the quiet, guilt-ridden grandmother they could park in the backyard and forget. I was the founder of Grandma's Getaway, and I was ready for war. I started with Airbnb support, told them everything about the vandalism, the reviews, the strange cancellation pattern. Turns out, they had already flagged an IP address linked to multiple fraudulent reports on my listing. They traced it. Same Wi-Fi used to book pizza deliveries to my daughter's house. Same Wi-Fi my own grandchildren used to play video games. Olivia, my daughter, my own flesh and blood. She had tried to destroy my livelihood from the comfort of her living room. I stared at the email for what felt like hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just shut down. How do you confront someone who smiled in your face while sticking knives in your back? How do you look at the child you raised and realize she never saw you as a person at all? I made a choice. No confrontation. No fight. Just action. I reinstated my listing with evidence. I posted my story publicly. Didn't name names, just shared my journey. Within days, news outlets picked it up. Backyard grandma makes $20 after being cast aside. Woman turns tiny shed into luxury escape after family betrayal. The views exploded. So did bookings. But then came the part I didn't expect. The messages. One from a woman in Detroit, "You gave me courage to leave my toxic daughter's house." Another from a man in Florida, "I moved into a trailer after my kids dumped me. You reminded me it's never too late." Then one that hit me hardest. "You're not just a host, you're hope." I sat in my little shed, surrounded by string lights and lavender, and felt more seen than I had in decades. Meanwhile, Olivia had gone silent, Eric too. I didn't see the grandkids for 3 weeks, didn't hear a knock on the door, didn't get a single text, until one Sunday afternoon. I was trimming my garden when I heard it. Tap, 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 at the shed door. I turned, and there she was, Olivia. Hair a mess, eyes red-rimmed, holding a dish I hadn't seen in years. "Lasagna. Hi, Mom," she said, smiling like nothing had happened. I raised an eyebrow. "Lasagna, huh?" She laughed nervously. "Thought I'd bring dinner. Maybe we could talk?" I stepped aside, not for her, but for the story I needed to hear. She sat down on my reading chair, glancing around like a stranger. "This place is really beautiful, Mom. I didn't realize how much you put into it." I said nothing. She fiddled with her hands. Then she broke. "We're in trouble," she whispered. "Eric lost his job. We're behind on the mortgage. The kids." Her voice cracked. "They miss you." I took a long breath. She wasn't here for an apology. She was here for help. And suddenly, the truth laid itself bare. They didn't move me to the shed to give me independence. They moved me out to make room for their lives. And now, they needed mine. I looked her straight in the eye. "Funny thing, Olivia. When I moved into the shed, you all said I was being dramatic." She winced. You said I was chasing attention, that I was embarrassing. I know, Mom, I was wrong. I was scared. Jealous, maybe. I didn't expect you to thrive. I smiled. That's the thing about underestimating people. They never stay small. That evening, I made her an offer, not out of bitterness, but strategy. You can stay in the house rent-free for 3 months, I said. Use the time to find work. Get back on your feet. Her eyes lit up. Really? Thank you, Mom. Thank you. I raised a finger. On one condition. She blinked. Anything. You work for me. Help clean the shed between bookings. Handle guest check-ins. Learn how this business runs. Her face twisted slightly. You want me to work the Airbnb? I leaned forward. You tried to destroy it, Olivia. Now you'll help it grow. She agreed. What choice did she have? Over the next weeks, I trained her like I trained the guests to light the fire pit just right. With precision, with care. She hated it at first. But something changed. The more she heard the laughter from guests read the thank you notes, the more she saw me. Not as her mother, but as Margaret, a woman who refused to disappear. Last week, we sat out front as the sun dipped behind the trees. She looked at me and said, I used to think you were weak. I sipped my tea. I used to think I was, too. She reached over, touched my hand. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. But I said, I forgive you. Sometimes, healing means building something new. Not just for yourself, but for the ones who tried to break you. So if you're watching this, and you've been cast aside, undervalued, or made to feel like your best days are behind you, let this be your sign. You are not done. You are not a burden. And you sure as hell don't need permission to rise. Turn your shed into a sanctuary. Turn your pain into purpose. And when they come knocking again, you decide if you open the door. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because everyone deserves a second chance, and sometimes it starts in a backyard shed. Thanks for watching.